Today I'm going to replace this fuel pump in a 69 Cougar on a 351 Cleveland. We have a problem here, as you saw earlier, that this thing barely has any fuel in it, and going down the road it surges real bad and it just won't even take RPM. It's really not happy. We inspected these rubber fuel lines going from the frame here to the pump and then from the gas tank to the hard line in the back, and there was no obvious problems. I believe the lines are fairly new. And we did test the pump with a fuel pressure gauge, and it was puffing at 10 psi, but it wasn't really holding anything, and I'm guessing that's because it was just compressing the air in here. So we're a little bit on the parts throwing side, but we're going to start with this and see where that gets us. And we can see the pump down here is right there. We might be able to get it from the bottom, but this power steering pump's just going to be in the way no matter if I do it from the up top or from the bottom, and I'd rather do it from the top. So I'm going to remove this pump. I'm just going to take off this bracket and then kind of lay it aside here. I'm starting with the belt tensioner, which is just the pump itself on this car. Now with that loose, this pump should swing over just like that. I should be able to push this pump over and get the belt off. That is flipping toasty. Okay, I don't need the belt clear off, I just need it out of the way since it's behind the alternator belt. Now I'm going to leave these two bolts here. I'm going to take off these two that go through the water pump and just take off the whole bracket and then lay this whole thing forwards. Just pinch my finger between the ratchet and the water pump pulley. That was really dumb. I just mentioned I just drove this car for like an hour, so it's really flipping toasty. And especially after an hour, that fuel filter should have been full of gas. Okay, I didn't realize this top bolt went clear through to the cylinder head, so I need to remove that one all the way. Okay, I'm going to grab these washers from back here, these little spacers, because I don't want to drop them. It's very important that these pulleys stay aligned. It can ruin the belt. So I'm just going to lay that right there, and it's going to hang out. See the fuel line a lot better. No obvious problems. It is rock hard though. Maybe I should change it while I'm at it. Now there's another hex on the back side of that that's probably going to need to be held. Did I just get lucky? So what I was talking about is sometimes when you take off this nut right here, you have to hold this part with another wrench, otherwise you can just twist the pump leg and just break it off. I got super lucky here and didn't have to do that, just because it's easier to get at it with one wrench. It's the worst when the line is loose enough, it turns real easy with a wrench, but it's tight enough you can't get it with your fingers. Oh no, it's gone. So for the hose feeding the pump, I have a 1/4 inch nut driver. I'm going to try to pry the fuel line off of this so I don't tear it or anything. Looks like it's coming off pretty easy. Now, fuel should just dump out of this thing, and it's not. So that is a little concerning. Maybe the pump's still alright, but there should be fuel dumping out of this thing. If the fuel tank is low, I'm okay with it not just dumping out at the end of this. I'm going to put about somewhere between 5 and 10 gallons in this thing, because I want to make sure that fuel is going up to that hose and I don't have another problem going on. There you go. See how I have gas just dumping out of it now? That's the way it should be. Only because the tank was almost empty. Because cracked line or not, fuel would have been coming out at the end of that. So that definitely points more towards the pump is the problem. So we're going to continue with changing that out. Get this hose out of the way. 1/2 inch bolts on the pump. This bottom one's going to take a while to get off. Having the bottom radiator hose off would be better, but I don't really want to deal with the cooling system. This fuel line up and out of here. So I'm going to leave this top one a little snug and go for the bottom one first. So the minute it gets loose enough I can get up by hand, I can. Okay, there's a spring-loaded arm in here. The spring-loaded arm right here will fight you. As soon as you start to get these bolts out, it's going to start to come out like this. And if I keep this one tight, it can't move, and I can get this one out by hand and then get the one that I can actually get to. There we go. Finally just got it loose enough. Anything by hand is faster. Bolts out. It's really flipping hot. Perfect. And now the easy one. And now see how I'm loosening up? See how it's starting to pop out on the bottom? That arm is pushing it out. And already, see how it's pushing it up? So it's already fighting me. So I'm pushing pressure down on this fuel pump at the same time pull this bolt out, because when it gets to that last thread, I don't want it to damage the threads when it puts all that pressure upwards on it. There we go. Now this 30-year-old pump's finally coming out. Ooh, it's hot. Okay, in hindsight, that was really dumb. You don't want to get gas on stuff because it will eat paint away. So I should have been smarter than that. Came with 2 gaskets. Okay, cool. Gonna make sure our block surface is clean. It looks like the old gasket's stuck on there. Get the diamond tip scraper out. You run your finger over the block, make sure it's nice and smooth. I got a little chunk there yet. Because a gasket will not seal to another gasket, it will leak. So you gotta make sure this is clean. Hit it at some different angles here. Make sure I get it all. Okay, here's that finger in there, get any dirt that might have got in there out quick. Got a new rag here, I'm gonna spray some brake clean on it. I'm gonna clean this surface, make sure it's free of any oil and grime that would cause it to not seal. So it's nice and smooth, it's clean, any oil, see all that grime and oil, that stuff, the surface looked clean, but it wasn't. So now let's do that again on a new part of the rag. See that difference? Still got dirt off of it, but it wasn't near as bad. So get any fuzzies out of there from the rag. Now we're good to put that new pump on. For a quick visual, there'll be an off-centered cam lobe on the end of the camshaft right here. So when you put it in a block like this, you're gonna have to come in at an angle and go up against it as you get it on these bolts here. All right, gonna put this top bolt in first. And we're gonna have to put some real pressure on it to get it lined up. There's enough pressure on this bolt, I'm gonna have to turn it with the wrench to get it started. But I got it mostly in place there, but I don't want to tighten it down just yet when I get the bottom one started. You never want to tighten a bolt all the way down without starting all of them first. Now I'm going to tighten up this top one just enough to get the pump to suck in, kind of like that. And now I'm going to screw on this bottom one as far as I can by hand, and then finish it with that wrench. Getting the bolt snug, but not super tight. Gonna hook up the hard line first since it's behind the other hose and a little harder to get to. And I'll just double check, and this is a flare fitting, very similar to what you'd find on a brake system, so there's no O-ring or gasket that goes in there. Once again, we're gonna get this snug, but not super snug. Tight, and remember, if it leaks, we can always get in there and tighten it some more later. But we'll check it first thing when we fire it up. Put our feed hose back on. Gonna push it on a little further than it was last time. Snugging up the feed clamp. I'm gonna make sure this other one's tight while I'm at it and I can get to it. It was not, so that's super cool. It was actually really loose, so that could have been some of our problem too. Get that good and snug, because it can suck air through there. It is possible to have it suck air in and not have a fuel leak out. It is very possible. It does happen on these. That's why you want to check these lines for any sort of cracks or dry rot or anything. So that being loose like that could have been part of the problem. I'm running into the problem where the power steering hoses are hitting this fuel line and I can't put the pump all the way back. I think this metal hose is fine. I'm going to have to route this gas line on the other side of this power steering hose. That's stupid. Still hitting that metal line, but it's got enough of a curve to it that I think it'll be fine. So I'm just starting the bolts for now. I'm going to get these spacers put on this long bolt so I can properly align all of the pulleys. I don't like starting bolts with a wrench like this, but sometimes you just kind of have to. There you go. I'm not tightening it down just yet because that is my pivot point for this to turn on. These two bolts here don't have any slots or adjustment to them, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten them down. Just snug. Don't need to kill them. Now we put our belt back on. So this is the trickiest part. You're going to have to somehow hold the power steering up at the same time as getting it tight enough to actually not squeal or anything. So sometimes we can go like this, pry kind of against itself. Can't go too much though, because you don't want to damage the body of the power steering pump, because that is also the reservoir. but going like this, I can get pretty good tension on it like that. So we're gonna try that. Remember, if it squeals, you can always come back and make it tighter. Really should have a washer on it. It's digging into that slot down there. That's not good. Get that pretty snug so it can't move. These V-belts you can get pretty darn tight without hurting them too bad. They almost have to be so they don't slip. So that's pretty tight. The alternator belt is a little loose for my opinion, but I'm gonna leave it alone. So I'm gonna fire it up and immediately check underneath looking for fuel leaks, and then we'll be seeing if that starts filling up. Make sure she's in park. Hopefully we'll see a lot more fuel. Look at that. Immediately it's already filled with fuel. Got a little tiny air bubble in there. It's already fixed. And the time I started it to coming out here, this was already full. So that old pump was junk. So this is what you always want to check. I got a massive fuel leak happening right now. So I diagnosed this quickly off camera because fuel leak's kind of dangerous and I didn't want to sit here and fight everything. But with a mirror down here, it's going to be hard to see. Well, either way, as if on cue, the fuel line going into the fuel pump ripped in half. I was talking about a split hose. That hose that I was like, oh, it'll be fine, ran for 30 seconds and then absolutely split open and started dumping fuel everywhere. So all the parts stores are closed now, so I'll get one of these tomorrow and we'll get that thing fixed back up the way it needs to be. I rewatched some of my video footage and this fuel line goes in front of both of the power steering hoses. So I gotta route this around first with the pump down and then put the pump back up. So that makes things easier. I just don't really like the look of it. I hate how it's overlapped, but it is what it is. I'm gonna change my mind. I think I'm gonna cut this to length first. Gonna put this hex side where I can get to it easier with the nut driver. And put in the clamp just up next to the flange. Get the best seal that way. Take your pliers like this, and we're gonna have to break the seal on this without bending the hose, or the line I mean. See, the hose is turning separate from the line, so I can twist it and push at the same time, and then it will come off and leak everywhere, just like that. The hose is kind of fighting me a little bit there. There we go, clamp right up next to the lip of the line. Okay, so that clamp's all tightened up, got the new hose on, so now these two lines go on the back side of that, and this should fit with a lot less problems now. You can see I got a washer down there on that bolt and one on that one. They're a little too big for it. They kind of look goofy, but it's better than not having one at all. I didn't do a run beforehand to show the difference. Since it was running lean, that's a good way to hurt an engine.